Hello, I'm Iain Dale, and the team have put together what they think are my best moments of 2025. I'm just worried that it's only going to be about 20 seconds long, but let's see.
Good evening to you, Iain. I think the Nobel Peace Prize should go to Greta Thunberg, far more than Donald Trump. But definitely, I think Greta Thunberg, for her effort, for raising the profile of what's happening in Gaza to such a degree, and for her effort, a single-minded effort to try and relieve the famine. I think was equivalent to a state. What she did was equivalent to a state. Sorry.
How did she bring attention to the issue in Gaza? We all knew what was going on in Gaza. It didn't take Greta Thunberg to tell us, did it?
This is the kind of caller that really gets my goat, where they have no idea about the usual interaction between people. They've got something to say and they're going to say it, come what may, regardless of what you say, regardless of whether you want to interrupt and have a proper debate.
In Europe and America do not allow NATO come to our borders. And then somebody like Zelensky comes along and he wants to join NATO. And there's so many people, innocent people getting killed, they're displaced for what?
That's what happens in war. Innocent people do get killed. It's highly regrettable. But we seem to have built up a generation of people who think that, well, it's immoral that war should happen, even when the war is completely moral, like the fight back from Ukraine against Russia.
It's not an invasion. Terry, I'm not interested in hearing your views anymore. If you think that was not an invasion, what do you think hundreds of thousands of Russian troops going over the Ukrainian border was if it wasn't an invasion? Who invaded Ukraine? Which country invaded Ukraine?
Russia.
Exactly.
They had no right to do that. But you got to remember, you can only push people so far. And they say, look, this is it. We came along, we made arrangements. That was there was end of USSR.
Did you notice the silent sigh there? Almost silent, just so the listener can understand how frustrated I'm getting. And believe me, these calls drive me to the edge of distraction.
I wonder what you think, whether we should be allowed to apply to join international organisations if one other country thinks we shouldn't. Honestly, Terry, people like you make me absolutely sick.
It all came out in the end. What evidence is there that either the pilot of the helicopter, the pilot of the plane, or any of the people in the control tower at Reagan Airport came from a diverse background?
Well, there's none at the moment.
Well, exactly.
But
How can you sit there and blithely support these disgraceful remarks?
First of all, they're not disgraceful. We're finally getting somebody out there who breaks the silence of the establishment and tells the truth.
By the way, I have an innate respect for Kurt Schlichter's ability to publicise his own books. He's a man after my own heart.
Every institution.
And it's all down to minorities, is it? It's all down to minorities. Is that really what we're going to have for the next 4 years? Blame every failure in America on minorities from diverse backgrounds and people with disabilities?
All I know is every time some psychotic leftist murderer goes on a shooting spree, within 40 seconds, I get told I need to disarm myself.
Chris, can you get this numbskull off our programme, please? I'd never want to speak to him again. Mr. Schlichter didn't react very well to that and started a pile-on social media against me. Absolutely hilarious. But he is a typical example of somebody who will call black white if it aids his argument. I mean, I think he's a barrister or something. I mean, honestly, I don't want people like that on my programme. Now, you can argue, well, you should let everyone have their say, Iain. Treat them with respect. Well, I'll treat him with the respect he deserves, which is bugger all.
I'm asking you to justify how the British taxpayer is expected to pay benefits to 1.3 million non-British citizens.
Be prepared for not much of an answer here.
No other country would do this, would they?
Bear in mind, this interview lasted 7 years. It felt like 7 years. It lasted 7 minutes.
Yeah, we're talking. I don't know how to frame this without getting caught up in a framework which I think is quite difficult. There are a huge number of people already who have come to the UK who are subject to no recourse public funds conditions, and they cause a huge amount of harm. People like international students or people on skilled workers, skilled workers, people on skilled worker visas. And the idea of having no access to protections regardless of the situation is really, really concerning.
So why should an international student have any protection at all? At this point, I was rather worried that the LBC emergency tape would kick in, because if there is silence on air for a certain amount of time, we effectively go off air and an emergency tape kicks in.
I think so.
I'm sorry, Aya, if you can't answer a basic question like that, what on earth are you doing talking about this? Now, that's the only time in 16 years that I've ever experienced an interviewee coming on the radio to talk about a subject which she's supposed to be an expert on and not have a clue. Couldn't answer a single question.
The country that was built, cultivated by my ancestors, has been given away to anybody who would come here, and the government has been the midwife to that project. And I think that it's only going to lead to destruction.
Down the street, you have very strange eyesight, I would say.
Well, I don't know if you've been to a town like Swindon recently, Ian.
Fun enough, what did you think of it? About 2 months ago.
Well, there we go. And what did you think when you were walking down the high street, when you saw the graffiti, the litter, the boarded up shops, and the...
That's austerity.
And you blame that on immigrants, do you?
I don't blame it on immigrants. I blame it on the government, who has permitted this incredibly destructive policy of mass migration, which has...
You do blame it on immigrants.
Charlie Downs is a new phenomenon in British politics. He's what's known as an ethno-nationalist, something that we would have called in the 70s and 80s a racist. Every answer he gave on that programme, it was the first time he'd appeared, whatever the question was, he brought it back to Muslims or immigrants. And at one stage, I think it was after the first quarter of the show, in the break, I remember saying to him, rein your neck in. Because I told him he had to respect the rules of the programme. If a listener asked a question on HS2, then he has to give an answer on HS2, not try and pervert it into a discussion on immigration. There are a lot of people like Charlie Downs around at the moment, and they're getting increased media coverage. I mean, I did ask myself after he'd appeared whether we should have actually invited him on. But he's on all sorts of programmes, on all sorts of channels now. And he's on basically because he is quite articulate. He's good on camera. But I often think to myself, I wonder which political party he'd have been a member of in the 1930s. I think most people remember 2025 for three reasons. Firstly, it's been the year of Donald Trump. I think in his first 6 months in office, we probably led our programme or featured him in some way in 75% of our programmes. And there were lots of reasons for that. That meeting with Zelensky, nobody will forget that from this year. Secondly, I think it's the year that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, well, imploded, is that too strong a term? I think that's been a theme of this year, where neither Keir Starmer nor Rachel Reeves has been able to articulate a vision that the electorate has been able to buy into. And thirdly, you've got two international wars, the Israel-Gaza war and the Russia-Ukraine war, both been at the top of the political agenda all year. And I think those have been the two most challenging subjects for any phone-in host to cover.